So let's talk about two related stories involving the crimes of Donald Trump, and then let's try to assess when we can realistically expect some accountability. Because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So let's talk about two somewhat related stories on the legal front, or maybe more precisely on the accountability front. The first story on the upside involves the Georgia state investigation into Donald Trump's election crimes. And there's some new reporting about the timetable for that investigation that's being conducted by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. Here's the new reporting from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Headline: Fulton DA clarifies timeline for witness testimony in Trump probe. And that article begins, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis will wait until after the May 24 primaries to call in witnesses to testify about whether former President Donald Trump tried to illegally overturn election results in Georgia in 2020. Selection of a special grand jury will begin on May 2nd, but the group won't hear from witnesses until June 1, Willis said in an interview with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on Monday. Willis said the 4-week gap would give jurors time to approve subpoenas for reluctant witnesses and for the district attorney's office to deliver those documents into people's hands. The veteran prosecutor also acknowledged that she's waiting until after the primaries to avoid the perception that her actions are politically motivated, as her Republican critics allege. And here's what DA Willis said. I don't want anyone to say, oh, she's doing this because she wants to influence the outcome of this upcoming election, the Democrat said. The people will decide the outcome of this upcoming election. It will have nothing to do with this district attorney's office. And this next passage is both interesting and important. She, DA Willis, said that at least 50 people have voluntarily testified before prosecutors and that she plans to seek subpoenas for at least 30 others who had previously declined to be interviewed. She added that there are another 60 or so people her team is hoping to talk to in the weeks ahead. The special grand jury is authorized to meet until spring 2023, but could wrap work earlier. Now, friends, we all know that Donald Trump's election crimes in Georgia were captured on a recorded phone call. He told the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, just find me 11,780 votes. In other words, as far as Donald Trump was concerned, the actual vote count, the legitimate vote count, didn't matter. Just corruptly declare me the winner. Now, I want to talk in a minute about how this reminds me of wiretap cases I handled as a prosecutor, cases where the crime was captured on a recorded call. But first, let's turn to the second story. And if the Georgia story was an upside story, well, this one is a downside story. Here's the new reporting from the New York Times. Headline: Trump allies continue legal drive to erase his loss, stoking election doubts. And I'll quibble with one word there, legal. I don't know that it's a legal drive. It feels a lot more like an illegal drive. But that article begins, a group of President Donald J. Trump's allies and associates spent months trying to overturn the 2020 election based on his lie that he was the true winner. Now, some of the same confidants who tried and failed to invalidate the results based on a set of bogus legal theories are pushing an even wilder sequel, that by decertifying the 2020 vote in key states, the outcome can still be reversed. In state houses and courtrooms across the country, as well as on right-wing news outlets, allies of Mr. Trump, including the lawyer John Eastman, are pressing for states to pass resolutions rescinding electoral college votes for President Biden and to bring lawsuits that seek to prove baseless claims of large-scale voter fraud. Some of those allies are casting their work as a precursor to reinstating the former president. And notably, the efforts have failed to change any statewide outcomes or uncover mass election fraud. Legal experts dismiss them as preposterous, noting that there is no plausible scenario under the Constitution for returning Mr. Trump to office. Okay, friends, the good news, if we can tease out a little bit of good news from that story, the good news is state resolutions trying to rescind the 2020 electoral vote count are not a thing. So these efforts will fail. But it really raises a more fundamental question. How is it that Donald Trump's co-conspirators, and I use that term advisedly because a federal judge announced in his ruling that Donald Trump and John Eastman were co-conspirators in federal crimes designed to overturn the election's results. So how is it that Donald Trump's co-conspirators can continue their corrupt pursuits? I think there's actually an answer to that question. They continue their corrupt pursuits because there's been no accountability. Let's jump back to the Georgia story for a minute. In Georgia, the crime was captured on audio tape, on a recorded phone call. And I mentioned that reminds me of the Title III wiretap cases that I handled as a prosecutor. When you actually catch the conspirators talking about their crimes on recorded phone calls. Can I tell a quick war story? You know, we had a wiretap case where the conspirators were talking to one another in code. And so you would hear them say, yeah, you know, I think we're going to need 6 footballs for the game this weekend. You think you can get your hands on 6 footballs? And the other conspirator would say, yeah, I got you covered. I think I can round up 6 footballs, okay? They weren't talking about footballs. They were talking about kilos of cocaine, not the most challenging code to crack. And then, of course, we would develop cooperating witnesses, members of the conspiracy who said, yeah, we used the word football when we were talking about keys of coke. Well, Donald Trump didn't even have the good sense to disguise what he was saying on his dirty phone call when he told Brad Raffensperger, just find me 11,780 votes and corruptly declare me the winner. You know, that would be like our conspirators in the drug case say, hey, I need 6 kilos of cocaine to sell this weekend, right? They had slightly more sense than Donald Trump, but it was just as illegal. And the evidence at trial is just as powerful. I call it a press play trial. When you have Donald Trump committing the crime on a recorded phone call, all you do is press play for the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, any questions? Please retire to deliberate and hold Donald Trump accountable for his crimes. But we're experiencing a challenge right now because clearly there's enough evidence to arrest and indict Donald Trump. It only requires probable cause, and you've already had a federal judge rule that based on the evidence presented to him in some civil litigation, that Donald Trump and John Eastman are co-conspirators by a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not, 51%. They're co-conspirators in felony crimes designed to overturn the election's results. So we have enough evidence. Prosecutors have enough evidence 10 times over to arrest and indict Donald Trump, but it's not happening. And here's what happens when prosecutors decline to bring cases where there is already enough evidence to bring a case. The respect for the rule of law erodes. And that is why Donald Trump co-conspirators like John Eastman can go out there and continue their criming ways because there's been no accountability for John Eastman's earlier crimes in a conspiracy with Donald Trump. So it devalues the law. And it does away with the deterrent effect of the John Eastmans of the world, deciding maybe I shouldn't continue committing crimes because I've already been indicted for my first round of felonies designed to overturn the election's results, designed to unconstitutionally install Donald Trump in the presidency for a second term. But the respect for the rule of law and the value for the rule of law and the deterrent effect of bringing charges just sort of evaporates. And that enables, arguably even encourages, precisely the kind of crimes we continue to see by Donald Trump and John Eastman and other co-conspirators who have been part of Donald Trump's conspiracy. It's a hub and spoke conspiracy. That's the model of conspiracy that seems to emerge based on the evidence. They continue their criming ways. And yes, I preach on the one hand the need for patience. I obviously show my own frustration with how slowly things are moving and with the devaluation of the rule of law and the respect for the rule of law that we're seeing that enables the John Eastmans of the world to continue their criming ways. But I'm not prepared to, call for the resignations and the replacements of various prosecutors, federal or state, because I understand they're putting a big old case together. But they also have to take into account that public safety hangs in the balance, that the health and viability of our democracy hangs in the balance. But frankly, friends, all we can do is wait. We can try to exercise patience, but we can continue to raise our voices when we're frustrated or when we see injustice playing out, when we see the continued crimes of Trump, John Eastman, and company unfolding before our very eyes. And I still believe, as I always say, that we're going to get there. I hope we get there in time. I think we'll get there in time. But I still believe we're going to get there. And I still know that justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.